But I refuse to sit back and watch someone abuse their platform, take advantage of their following, and blatantly lie to people and still say they represent this community. I will not do it. That is why I'm making this video. Nobody wants to speak out at all.
Do you want to know about the real King Pokemon? I guess I'll have to weigh in on this one. Hey everyone, what's up from Pokemon Classics, reminding you that the classics, like having empathy for others prior to passing judgment on people's personal motives, never goes out of style. Alas, empathy and understanding are the subject of today's video, as tensions seem unnecessarily high in the Pokemon community, over what I feel is primarily a misunderstanding between two massively influential figures in the Pokemon community, and their followers, Frosted Caribou and Gary, also known as King Pokemon. Now, Frosted Caribou is no stranger to calling out others she finds problematic to the Pokemon community. In fact, a few months ago, her video, How Did the Pokemon Trading Card Game Get Here?, addressed the product shortages, the rampant scalping, and financial focus that had taken hold of the hobby in recent times. In her video, she asserts that YouTubers and influencers were primarily responsible for these accessibility issues, and that Pokemon's surge in popularity was having a disproportionate impact on children and players. Although she was primarily addressing larger YouTubers like Leonhart, Logan Paul, and PokeRev, she did include a few clips of me in her video, which I really didn't mind. In fact, I agreed with some of her points and told her so in a comment. Though I still think she's overestimating the influence of Pokemon YouTubers and vastly underestimating the numerous other factors contributing to the explosion of the collectibles market in 2020. After all, it wasn't just Pokemon experiencing record interest, it was sports cards, magic cards, cryptocurrencies, the stock market, the housing market, you name it. With stimulus money pouring in, government shutdowns, and Pokemon receiving international attention due to its 25th anniversary, all of the stars aligned to form the perfect storm, with or without the influence of YouTubers. But I digress. Anyway, with the market finally calming and products finally available once more, it took me by surprise to learn that Frosted Caribou had set her sights on a new target, someone that has been highly involved in building the foundations of the hobby, King Pokemon, better known to us collectors as Gary. For those of you unaware, last week, Boo released a series of tweets critical of Gary and what she perceived as his toxic influence on the hobby. While Boo is completely entitled to her opinion, I can't help but feel that some of her criticisms are misinformed, based on assumptions and a lack of experience in the collector's side of the hobby. She seems to be unaware of why Gary has earned a favorable reputation amongst so many collectors, how he's legitimized Pokemon collecting by contributing to its acceptance and accessibility, and what his true motives and intentions are within the Pokemon hobby.
And he was very, very heavily involved with the financial side of Pokemon. That's the only way I really knew of Gary.
Now, I'm not here to defend everything Gary has ever said or done, nor am I here to belittle Frosted Caribou. I've seen some pretty nasty things from followers on both sides, and the last thing that I want to do is sort out the he said, she said areas of this dispute. Instead, I want to offer another perspective as someone who's been in the hobby since the beginning. For full disclosure, I've known Gary for a number of years, and although we've never met in person, I feel compelled to at least share what I do know about him and his dealings with Pokemon. So without further ado, let's unpack some of these criticisms. The central criticism seems to involve a statement Gary made about his signed BGS-10 Charizard while appearing on finance YouTuber Graham Stephan's show. In the clip, Gary is asked about the value of this particular Charizard and why it is so much more valuable than the other PSA 10s, with the noticeable difference being the illustrator's signature on the card. Gary goes on to state repeatedly that the signature doesn't add value to the card and that it means nothing, and that he has considered having it removed. But what he doesn't do is clarify his meaning or explain his rationale for this.
Wow. In this case, the signature means very little. Arita, who did design that Charizard, and it's signed on the case, not the card.
Right.
I mean, never would you let him sign that card, because that's extremely special.
Wait, who signed this?
Arita,
Mitsurito,
the artist. Which in a lot of cases, that's a big deal. But this card is such a big deal, his signature means nothing.
To be fair, Gary handled this really poorly, and I can understand why the general public would see these statements as disrespectful to Arita. But there is some important context here that most non-collectors would easily miss. Unlike his PSA 10 Charizards, of which over 120 exist, this particular first edition Charizard was a BGS 10, one of only 2 in the world at the time, making it not only the most iconic card in Pokemon, but also the best example in the world.
You put a PSA under a fine-tooth comb, and then you get Beckett.
There's 121 of those PSA 10s in the world.
That is the tens of the tens.
Right.
It's like the top 1% or the top 0.1%.
There you go.
Naturally, the appeal of such a card is its condition, the surface gloss, the coloration, the centering of the borders, the cut of the corners and edges. And when it comes to grading, the difference between even a 9.5 and a 10 can be so subtle that it often requires special lighting and magnification. With that in mind, many collectors would find the autograph distracting, as it obscures certain features that set this particular card apart from all of the rest. It's really not an issue of does the signature impact the value of the card, but does the signature distract from the card's artwork and condition? And in this case, it might. It's really a matter of personal preference.
It is not even touching the artwork of the card at all.
In all the time that I've known Gary, he has never been anti-autograph. In fact, he has collected and showcased many Illustrator autographs over the years, including this one from Jimeno on his Instagram page back in early 2020. I'm also a huge fan of the Birthday Pikachu artwork, by the way. To me, this criticism of Gary is a bit unfair. I don't think he intended any disrespect towards Pokemon or its artists, but instead did a poor job of explaining what made this particular Charizard unique and why he felt the signature was distracting. As a fellow collector, I understand his point of view, but as an objective viewer, I can also understand why others would interpret this as disrespect. Poor communication, false assumptions, it's the perfect recipe for misunderstanding. Perhaps an even greater misunderstanding about Gary, though, is that he's only concerned about inflating the value of his Charizard collection and sucking as much money out of Pokemon as possible. This assertion is almost laughable to anyone that has known Gary for more than a few years. For most casual fans and collectors, Gary rose to prominence when he was invited onto Pawn Stars with his Charizard collection. But what people don't know is that Gary has been incredibly active as a Pokemon collector for decades, well before Pokemon was mainstream, popular, or profitable. Not only does Gary's collection go well beyond Charizards, but it goes well beyond Pokemon. Just look at the effort put into these binder collections, or the organization of sealed Pokemon magazines. He's collected Magic, Yu-Gi-Oh!, Dragon Ball Z, and pretty much anything else you can imagine. Contrary to popular belief, Gary didn't just emerge onto the scene a few years ago with a blank check, ready to buy up the market. But he's slowly amassed one of the world's most impressive collections through 25 years of collecting, 20 of which showed very little likelihood of ever seeing a return on his initial purchases. Even today, Gary is still notorious for refusing to sell items from his collection. He has such an emotional connection to his cards that it's rare to see him actually part with anything, and when he does, it's usually done to help the other party, to promote Pokemon, or support a charity. Often it's all three.
I'm very pokey rich.
For those that know Gary, this is what he means when he describes himself as pokey rich. He's not flaunting his wealth, but suggesting the opposite, that his collection isn't for sale. And although these cards may hold a lot of value, they're more important to him as cards. Unlike a lot of personalities out there, Gary doesn't see his collection as a liquid asset, ready to be cashed out and converted into dollars. He's just a guy with a lot of cards who's fortunate enough to be able to use his passion to inspire and help others. He's pokey rich. Personally, I think that's a refreshing mindset. Finally, there seems to be some criticism about Gary's public image and motives within the Pokemon community. Recently, Gary was a featured guest at Collecticon in Texas, where he spent the weekend meeting with fans, signing autographs, and promoting collectible games like Pokemon, MetaZoo, and more. However, some have taken issue with his public image in this process, sitting on a throne, signing personalized cards of himself, and setting himself up above others on some sort of metaphorical pedestal.
He also calls himself king. He sat in a throne at Collecticon, so that's not false.
This criticism is unfair and ignores the reasons why Gary was there in the first place. Collecticon specifically recruited Gary to sign autographs as a draw for their event, providing him with the throne and embracing the King Pokemon billing for the event. In short, Collecticon treated Gary as a VIP, not because he demanded it, but because he was there as one of their featured guests and draws for the event. I encourage you to watch any of Gary's YouTube videos, interviews, charity streams, or other guest appearances and find another example where he sits on a throne, dresses in designer clothing, or behaves like a diva. No offense to Gary, but if he can't even be bothered to organize his filming space or edit his videos, I sincerely doubt he's overly concerned with putting on some public image to impress others.
How did that get accepted? Whoops, sorry about that. Knocked it over.
It's also worth mentioning that this partnership with Collecticon netted $10,000 for Gary's autism charity. In fact, Gary has done more for charity in the last few years than most could hope to achieve in a lifetime. I have some personal experience here, as Gary offered to middleman my product donation to Leonhardt back in 2018 when I couldn't make it to Worlds myself. Led by Gary, a number of Pokemon collectors donated items, which Leonhardt auctioned off to raise money for NAMI, the National Alliance on Mental Illness. And last November, he and Steve Aoki ran a charity box break for autism, with Gary personally donating $100,000. Think about that for a moment. Many are quick to remember Gary's Charizard sale to Logan Paul for $150,000, but after factoring in the original cost of the card and the related fees for grading and storage and insurance, Gary basically turned around and donated 100% of the profit on that sale. I guess I'd rather have someone like that representing the hobby than the alternative. Since most of you watching this video are new to Pokemon, I wanted to close by highlighting some of the other contributions Gary has made to the hobby over the years. He helped organize and support collector forums and events, giving Pokemon enthusiasts opportunities to share their passions for Pokemon both online and in person. He helped countless new collectors get started by sharing key information about cards, sets, grading processes, eBay policies, and shipping tips and other useful information. He's helped build the foundation for PSA grading of Pokemon cards by working directly with PSA to verify release information and other related data. He helped legitimize Pokemon collecting to a mainstream audience, encouraging others that it's okay to like Pokemon, even as an adult. Most importantly, he helped model what it means to be successful as a collector in the hobby, not because he has a massively valuable collection of Charizards, but because he uses his platform those cards provide to enrich the lives of others and bring attention to well-deserving charities. Again, I'm not here to defend everything Gary has ever said or done. After all people are fallible, and he has said some things that were unnecessary and rude. But I also believe that most people are generally good at heart, and I think both Frosted Caribou and King Pokemon, despite their differences, both have good intentions and both share the same goal of making this hobby a better place for others to enjoy. Ultimately, though, that's not up to them. That's up to us as individual members of the community. The Pokemon community is such a vibrant and diverse landscape that it really is something to be celebrated and treasured. However, this can only happen if we have empathy for one another and seek first to understand before we rush to judgment or villainize those we disagree with. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. This has been weighing on me all week, and I hope if nothing else, this situation can give us all an opportunity to reflect and decide what kind of hobby we want to build for the future. Anyway, that's going to wrap it up for this one. I'm Pokemon Classics, reminding you that the classics never go out of style. We'll see you guys with the next video. Till then, stay safe and live well.